During the season of Lent, we Christians recall Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. I have interviewed 3 Christian leaders, Bishop Ernest Lyght, Reverend Debby Bellingham, and Ms. JoAnn Yoo. If you have not seen these videos, I have listed a link below. These interviews and many other conversations remind me that everybody has his or her wilderness seasons. Wilderness is an inescapable part of life's journey. Hi, I'm Albert Han, a coach, a spiritual director, and a United Methodist pastor. As I listened to these interviews, I came up with 3 questions we often face in our wilderness time. First, does my suffering have a meaning? Debby shared that she came to welcome her wilderness experience. She sees her wilderness experience not as a random suffering, but as God's invitation. In the midst of suffering, we often tell each other that God does not give us what we cannot handle, or everything happens for a reason. Personally, I see how these expressions are helpful at times, but I have witnessed deep human suffering that defy these notions. Still, in the face of the human suffering, we must answer whether we believe the wilderness we face are a part of random reality or there is a purpose and meaning. This is not a scientific question of an observable reality, but is a question of a larger perspective on life. Especially when life is dry and even frightening, how we answer the question of purposefulness or randomness of life leads us to very different paths. Second, am I alone? Bishop Lyght emphasizes that in the midst of his wilderness that he was not alone. Not only was God there with him, but also there was a community of faith praying for him. In our culture, it is easy for us to see ourselves primarily as individuals who join with others based on mutual interests and needs. Yet in the midst of suffering, we often find ourselves in isolation, often feeling like no one really understands us. Wilderness can be a lonely space where we grapple with our own issues away from the busyness of life. There we shed our superficial relationships and come to ask primal question, is anyone here for me? Away from all the distractions, we face the relationship question. Who is my friend? How important is my friendship in my life? How we answer this question of relationship leads us to very different paths. Third, do I believe? You can't give up. You can't check out, says JoAnn to those who may be ready to give up. What makes JoAnn not give up in the face of pervasive violence and injustice? She certainly admits that there are times she does not want to get out of bed. I certainly do not blame people for wanting to give up. Wilderness is a place where our faith is tested. Do I really believe? JoAnn talks about how your faith has to be greater than your fear. Do we believe that this wilderness will pass eventually? Do we believe that faith is greater than fear, that love is greater than hatred, and eventually that forces of death cannot overcome the power of life? In the midst of discouragement, when the hope is not quite visible to our naked eyes, the weight of our faith will lead us to very different paths. What other questions do you face in the midst of wilderness? We'd love to hear from you in the comment sections below, and please subscribe.